So it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Anke Loh. Anke Loh is a professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in the fashion department, and she focuses on textiles and wearable technology. Her collections have been featured internationally in New York Fashion Week, at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, the Museum of Science and Industry of Chicago, and the Festival International des Arts et de la Mode in Hyères, France. Her international collaborations include integrating Philips LumaLive panels into dresses and skirts, featuring videos of embedded LED screens, and a partnership with the Fraunhofer Institute in Berlin to explore stretchable circuitry. Anke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fabienne. Thank you for the team of curators and of the Design Center to invite me and include me in this really fabulous exhibition. I learned so much just from yesterday evening until now, so I'm very, very honored to be here. And what I thought I will do, I was asked to give a workshop, and I thought, a workshop? So what I want to do actually is a little bit something, a spin on it. I will talk a bit about my starting point of Embroidered Touch, so you get a little bit of a background for what we will see in the exhibition. It's a tablecloth on the table. And then after the talk, which is about half an hour, we can go downstairs, and then in groups we connected the tablecloth, and then you can try it. So I will go, I read and I go through it, so bear with me. So I'm a fashion designer by training and have worked at the nexus of art, technology, education and fashion for more than 15 years. With a focus on textile development and wearable technology, I would say most currently or most recently I explore ways to support people living with disabilities, those recovering from illness, and people who are socially isolated or marginalized. My collaborative approach often brings together physicians, scientists, designers, artists, and community members. A major area of my work is developing touch-sensitive textiles that trigger sound recordings and other kinds of outputs. So I'm trained as a fashion designer. I worked in the industry in Europe mainly, between Antwerp, Brussels, and Paris for quite a while. And in 2005, I was invited as a visiting artist to Chicago, to the School of the Art Institute, and I thought I would stay a year. Voila. That was in 2005, which was very captivating for me, and I was trained at an art school in a fashion department, but what was amazing about SAIC, I would say it's a very interdisciplinary school. So students go in and out of departments, there are no majors really. So going through the tenure track experience, after 7 years you get a sabbatical. So my first sabbatical I spent in Germany, so I went back home in a way, and I went to Aachen. It's a university which is focusing on tech, really technology and textiles. It doesn't have a fashion department, it's really technology driven. So under the auspices of a DAAD faculty research grant, I developed a new kind of touch-sensitive head covering, a cap that can sense and record the brain waves of patients with epilepsy. I did this in collaboration with the RWTH Aachen University and the Berlin's Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. So what was interesting about that university, they had a hospital next door, and I was in between my embroidery machine, learning how to embroidered electrodes, and going into the epilepsy department to understand how this would be applied on patients. And that is all with a fashion background. So I was like really stimulated by that experience. So when I came back to Chicago, as a result of that work in Germany, I was asked to collaborate with the Los Angeles-based Not Impossible Foundation on the design of a brain rider, a technology that enables people to communicate using their brain waves. Our design and the process of training patients in how to use it was presented at Digital Revolution, an immersive exhibition of art, design, film, music, video games at London's Barbican Centre in 2014. So this really goes back 10 years. These projects expanded my vision and enriched my work, curriculum, and student experience with the inclusion of a section on fashion for individuals living with disabilities. And that was really quite something, I have to say, because I was sitting in Zoom meetings with these neuroscientists, hackers, and the whole project was really DIY, so there wasn't really any funding. So we all had to come up and put in our hours. That wasn't really the problem. It was more that there wasn't any, how can I say, any money to build the brainwave device. So they all came up with the coding and the ideas and the technology, and then I had to come up with the design for the brain reader and writer. And it was just an amazing experience. So with that, fast forward in 2019, I was commissioned by the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry to contribute to their upcoming exhibition on wearable technology. And this is what I will start the presentation with. So with the support of Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry and with the support of Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry and the Goethe Institute Chicago, I collaborated with Christopher Baker, a colleague from SAIC, and ZSK Stickmaschinen, technical embroidery machines in Krefeld, Germany. We incorporated interactive embroidery into 2 fashion garments, which engaged not only with the wearer's body, but also with sensory input from the surrounding environment. The dress, which was in the previous slide and towards the right, was shown in the Wire to Wear, the wearable technology exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry of Chicago, and the skirt was exhibited at the Goethe Institute in Chicago. Yeah, this is, so these interactive sensory garments evolved from my initial questions about understanding the technical setup and requirements essential for creating a conductive grid that can sense and measure touch, movement, and pressure. From the initial layout to refining the design produced at the ZSK Technical Embroidery Facility in Krefeld, Germany. So these were early tests of understanding, okay, we have a grid, we have a touch-sensitive grid like our screen on the cell phone, and how can I put that into textiles? And this was starting points, and I really liked them visually, but they were not functional. So all my creativity had to kind of go back to function and what is really doing the trick to be touch sensitive. That was where I was present at the embroidery machine in Krefeld in Germany, working with a technician on the embroidery machine. So the sensory dress and skirt are embroidered with a colorful freeform grid that comprises both electrical conductive and non-conductive threads. The silver-coated conductive threads, which are tightly wrapped in colorful embroidery thread, act as decorative elements as well as functional touch sensors. The gridded sensor arrangement enables the tracking of both the position and motion of every touch. These integrated sensors may be used as an alternative computer interface, potentially for motion tracking or biosensing. We visualize the sensory data by transforming it from a wandering tangle of embroidery threads into animated movement driven by the position, speed, and the motion of touch. So this was the result at the Goethe Institute in Chicago, and at that point it was, we had a visualization of the garments when you touched it, and it was the first approach to visualize the touch. The materials we used for these first garments, the dress and the skirt, was cloth, embroidery thread, conductive thread, custom capacitive touch sensors, microcontroller, custom software. So we did, for the most part, it was really bought it from the shelf, learning by doing. And then from there, I did the next kind of phase, I guess, of embroidered touch. I call it embroidered touch 2. I kind of entered from a different angle. So artists and designers often reflect the political and social realities of the communities in which they live. During the Black Lives Matter demonstrations in Chicago, I visited many urban neighborhoods in the midst of the protests. An experience that served as a springboard for exploring the role of garments and textiles as a powerful mode of communication. The Embroidered Touch 2 project was the next phase of my earlier work, focusing on advancing and developing my research in touch-sensitive textiles. This collaborative project resulted in discovering new techniques and approaches to interlacing conductive yarns capable of sensing changes in touch, temperature, and other stimuli. And again, I was supported by a DAAD faculty grant, and I did this time a residency at the university in Niederrhein, and where I worked immediately with a colleague and a technician on their big embroidery machine. And going there wasn't really, how can I say, it wasn't really goal-oriented. The whole idea was to develop touch-sensitive textiles with all these imageries I took in Chicago and as an inspiration board. So we tested. In the beginning, I was showing with the dress and the skirt, I worked with conductive thread. But it also had disadvantages, learning by doing, and it wasn't always successful, the sensitivity. So what we did here, we brought it in the software, we punched a lot of these images, and if you are familiar with embroidery software, punching takes a long, long time. And it's also embroidery takes actually a long, long time. I didn't know all of that. So, what we did with these different designs, here's an image of conductive wire. We started to work with conductive wire, which gave us actually a much better result than the conductive thread. Let me see. Yeah. So the embroideries took the form of touch-sensitive grids and decorative motifs inspired by imagery on urban murals and street corners I saw throughout Chicago neighborhoods. The grids were embroidered with conductive thread over colorful recycled textiles and partially insulated with polyester thread, so that was one variation. We also worked with the conductive wire. We attached circuit boards and additional circuitry with the embroidery machine or by hand, actually mainly by hand. These methods reflect a focus on sustainable modes of production, where the garment construction is based on a zero-waste pattern-making techniques. So afterwards, I used some of these textiles and built a small collection out of them. So we produced multiple textiles. We produced multiple textiles and garments with varying degrees of touch sensitivity that can trigger sounds as a response to touch. The sound files, which were the output, the sound files we created are a mix of field recordings from nature and urban spaces, as well as string and percussion instruments. So this is an example with conductor strap insulated with polyester thread, and I quite liked it as a test, but again it wasn't working. Because the moment the bridge is not really a good insulation bridge, there is a short and it doesn't work. So that it's confusing for the testing. Another version of the grid version, I thought it looked quite nice, wasn't working. So honestly, after summer, and this takes a long time to embroider. I mean, this is not like 2-3 hours. This is a long time. So I was a little annoyed, and I said, you know what? Just for the final results, let's just only use the wire. Because the moment you use the wire, it's already insulated, and there is no shortcut. So it was or a short circuit. So this is some of the results, and you can see it's really, for some of it, it really stayed as textiles, and some of them I made with zero waste techniques into some garments. And then the next step, I would say, I got a research grant in Europe. It's called the Reframe Research Grant. It's the project in the beginning was called Reframe Embroidered Touch Life Space. That was in 2021. Yeah. So my initial research led to the 2021 launch of a new collaborative project called Reframe Embroidered Touch Life Space, intended to explore the future of fashion and technology. I partnered with Berlin's Fraunhofer IZM to advance the development of touch-sensitive embroidered textile further. At the center of this project, which we later named Touch and Staying in Touch, is the tactile nature of working with textiles, particularly in the context of machine embroidery. The sense of touch is a foundation and guiding principle for developing the technology and design choices I made throughout this project. It was particularly relevant while living through a pandemic when social distancing and a lack of physical interaction had become essential for survival as well as our new normal. So the idea was, how can I stay in touch, not only verbally or through texting or through Zoom, but through a tactile experience. So the result, here you can see a prototype, an early prototype of you touch the left one and how can this left touch go into the right, on the right side. So the result, I just go maybe back and forward a bit. The result were 2 custom-made unisex knit sweaters for adults featuring embroidered touch-sensitive designs and 2 unisex youth sweaters with conductive fabric that is laser cut into touch-sensitive design, laminated on a green knit sweater, then heat bonded to a hardware circuit board to make the design touch-sensitive. I will show that in a second. Here you can see how we tested it outside during the pandemic. So we did a sound recording for field recording for the sounds. So the moment you touch one line, you had a specific sound. So this kind of was the starting point of how to integrate touch with particular sounds. I have an amazing collaborator, Christine Schallenberg. She is a tech artist, but she's also a performance artist. So she kind of is an amazing translator from me to the scientists. So that is Christine here. And we also work with a local musician in Chicago, Peter Maunou. And he helped us to improvise with the sound. So it's definitely very collaborative, how I work. These are the 2 sweaters. So to illustrate the interaction between the wearer and smart textile, our team designed software that communicates with a circuit board, picking up signals from the embroidered material when it's touched. The data is then transmitted via Bluetooth to a website on an external device, laptop or mobile phone, triggering a sound file to play through the device. The sound files are a mix of what I said. The sound files are a mix of field recordings from nature, urban spaces, string and percussion instruments created by musician Peter Maunu, along with spoken and sung words by Christine Schallenberg. The resulting 4 sweaters, which communicates through sound and color changes, is as a response to touch and body heat, were exhibited in Berlin, Madrid, Bilbao, and Chicago. These are the sweaters, so how it works, you touch your sleeve and you can play it for yourself on your phone and you get the sound out of your device. You can also go into a mode where you connect to a second user and the other user also have to accept the conversation, and then you can send the sound back and forward via Bluetooth, and you don't have to be in the same space or in the same city. And then that's a little feature I just couldn't resist. It's not very technology, but we used a thread which changes color by temperature. So it's a little feature. So the live was changing colors depending on the different touches as well. This is a children's sweater, and it's conductive textiles laminated on the knit fabric, and then the boards, both boards on both sweater items are bonded from the Fraunhofer Institute, which is really a good technology to make it actually functional. So moving to the project which is downstairs, Embroidered Touch tablecloths derived from Embroidered Touch 2 from the previous explorations. The Embroidered Touch tablecloth reflects the intersection of art, technology and craft. Reflecting my multidisciplinary approach, it is a result of a collaboration with scientists at the Niederrhein University of Applied Science in Germany, ZSK, and Chicago artist Christine Schallenberg again and Peter Maunu. Together we created interactive embroideries on tablecloths that are positioned on custom tables made with repurposed legs and tops. When touched, the sensory embroidery triggers soundscapes, what I explained earlier. So we recuperated it into these tablecloths. The sounds evoke a longing for connection, touch and memory during the pandemic. Assembled again from field recordings of nature, urban spaces, varied soundscapes, also contain again string and percussion instruments and spoken words. So what happened, I had these textiles and a gallerist and a friend, an artist in Chicago, he saw these textiles and he said, why don't you exhibit the whole work in Chicago? And then he gave me his gallery. And then I thought, okay, how to exhibit the whole thing? And then I thought, okay, we are testing it the whole time on tables. I said, maybe let's try tables. And since I'm a fashion designer, I think, for me, everything is a body. What can I do? So I approached the tables also as a certain kind of body, and the legs as human legs. And then I definitely wanted that the tabletop had kind of the shape of the embroidery we ended up using, and then we went through different alteration of the different legs and different heights, and this was the final round in the gallery. So this work was exhibited at Facility Chicago in fall 2022. Yeah, here you can see the different. This was just one window out of the three. This was the opening night, so this is similar tablecloth which is also downstairs. And I come to that in a second. So I would say as a conclusion, my long-term research objective is to expand and discover new ways for technology to impact as well as alleviate feelings of isolation, particularly among marginalized communities. This approach is informed by the pandemic as well as the social unrest in the US. It also is a response to a need for change throughout the fashion industry to foster a more sustainable practice for creating and producing and consuming garments. So after this tablecloth experience, I thought, okay, what do I do now with this whole thing? And I worked over the last 2 years, I would say, I worked on different projects, community-based projects in Chicago, and I worked with a community of disabled artists or abled artists in Chicago, and on a variety of projects. And then I thought maybe I could ask them what they think of these tablecloths. So I did different feedback sessions in Chicago. This was one at Gateway to Learning. And just to see how they respond and what would their idea of what kind of sounds they would like to listen to or what would their wish would be different. So we did different demo sessions and also feedback sessions really for us to see, okay, what could be better or be more specific about it. This is what we are working on right now. And it's, at this point I was using recycled textiles. But there's such a component here where they can also contribute. So it's not just me giving their community my touch-sensitive embroidered textiles, but they're also really contributing right now by creating the textiles where the embroidery goes on top. So I would maybe conclude in addition to serving a functional purpose, clothing acts as our second skin, conveying who we are in the world, creating responsibly made textiles that communicate with diverse environments is at the heart of my current practice. So with that, so I have a video, hopefully the sound works. So that's kind of to give you an idea. And then we can go downstairs and can see hopefully how it works. No, on wood. But if you have any questions also feel free to, yeah.
I am very impressed by your work, but I have a practical question. How do you clean your textile? What do you put?
Yeah,
Can you repeat your
that's
question, please?
Yes, I am very impressed by your work, but I have a practical question. How do you clean those textiles?
Yeah. No, it's an important question, and I can tell you right now, I don't know yet. So that's kind of the luxury at being in the research phase of a project. So I'm really learning by doing, and I'm obviously very aware of that, you know, with my previous life as a fashion designer. So it's there, but if I think my approach is really like that. If you start with if I would start with these practical questions, I wouldn't even start this, because I don't know. I really don't know, and we will see. Yeah, right now I would say, you know, take a sponge, you know, but that's obviously not a good answer, so I don't want to say that. But yeah, I'm not there yet.
It's a
We
work
will
of
see.
art. It's a work of art.
It's an exploration.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a process, and of course there are different ways already. You know, where you can use certain technology which you take off and on, and then they say you can put it in a washing machine. But honestly, it's a lot of talk, and I haven't seen one good. I mean, but what do I know? But I haven't seen really a good example of that example where they say you can detach the technology and then you put it in the washing machine. I just still need to see that. So I think let's see what comes. Yeah. So I come back to you.
There may be a scientist that will come to you and find.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're out there. Yeah.
Other questions?
A little technical question as well, maybe less practical. You've shown a variety of pairs of hands touching the tablecloth. Does it change something if there's one person or if there's 3 or 4? How does it work exactly?
Also it's actually the technology part, I would say, behind this is actually not that advanced, I have to say. So it's every line is attached in our case to one sound. And what we offer at this point, or what we have, are different sound palettes. So you can choose on the website, you can choose a certain palette, and then each line is attached to a certain sound. And of course, if there's only one hand, you can only touch that much. But if you have 2 hands or 3 hands, you have much more of an acoustic. So that's really, it's very analog, I would say. Yeah, the more fingers or the more hands, the more music. Yeah.
Anybody else? No more questions? So, those of you, and I'm sure you know who you are, who have registered for the workshop will be the first group to experience it with Anke. And then everybody is invited at the Centre d'Exposition Exhibition Center downstairs on the first floor. And when you will be done, Anke will just have the next wave join. So the few of us who are organizing the symposium will just pay attention to who wants to go next. Okay.
And maybe I can add, there's also a video downstairs, and yesterday it's in on the flat table. And yesterday, I think because of so many visitors, you couldn't hear it, but Vincent told me there is definitely sound with it. So you can, it's also the longer version of this teaser, yeah, if you're interested.
Okay. So let's all go downstairs.